Welcome to my library, dear guest. My name is Ko, and I will be your storyteller. Lean back and relax as I read to you today's story, titled DM and Evil Player Insist That Trying to Kill a Player is Not PvP, by the author, Ander Ray. Background. When this campaign began, our group had been playing TTRPGs for about 6 years. We had mostly played different versions of Fate up until a year before this campaign, where we began to dabble in D&D 5e. We had a few boundary issues occur in past campaigns, but nothing on this scale. This campaign was the first time our main DM was running a 5e campaign, a high fantasy setting with firearms included. The cast. Names altered for privacy. DM. The DM of our campaign. John, mostly a bystander in this story, played a high-energy neutral kobold monk. Jacob, new player to our group but had played TTRPGs before, supposedly played a lawful neutral sorcerer. Tony, new to TTRPGs and our group in general, neutral gnome fighter. Noah, played a Goliath barbarian who tried to increase his glory by performing good and heroic deeds. Me, playing a neutral good mastermind rogue with high perception and investigation as a detective character. We had been playing our first D&D campaign with the main DM for a few months at this point. We had been playing as a group of refugee mercenaries who were on the losing side of a war and took odd jobs for pay while waiting to strike back at the demons who made us homeless. Up to this point, this campaign had already become notably infamous for the following reasons. There were several occurrences of PvP between Jacob's character and my own. We were transitioning a new player out of murder hoboism. The DM killed John's first character in the first session. My character was instantly killed from full hit points as a level 6 rogue, and a player permanently quit partway through. However, none of this compared to what would become our most infamous RPG horror story. Our party got a contract to repay a huge amount of debt by finding out what had been happening to a village with a history of recent missing persons and curses. What ensued was some of the most interesting gameplay in the campaign, engaging in town politics, investigation, tracking, and a few shifty merchants. Ultimately, we discovered the source of the problem was a coven of hags. Tracking them down was going to be difficult though, as they could shapeshift into and mimic the villagers, and were hard to pin down if we approached them straight on. We had a few different areas of the village we needed to watch simultaneously, so we temporarily split the party to watch the different sections of the village. Tony and I in one group, Jacob and John in a second, and Noah as a lone wolf. This is when disaster struck. Tony and I were able to sneak up on one of the hags and track them down to their lair, acquiring a few magic items in the process. But the other groups managed to cause such a clusterfuck that any gains seemed like footnotes in comparison. Recently, Jacob's character had his leadership role usurped through a group vote after abusing his role in previous arcs, and the responsibility was handed to Noah's Goliath. The barbarian was a lovable doof, but not the best at critical thinking. While keeping a lookout for the hags, Noah's character overheard a conversation in a nearby house with someone who sounded like my character, but many times dumber. He correctly deduced that the fake version of me was the hag, charged into the house and slew the lone figure inside, only to find out that hags could turn invisible and he had slain an innocent villager. This quickly escalated when the dead NPC's family returned home immediately afterwards and found him drenched in the blood of their loved one, and an angry mob began to form. Jacob and John, who were close enough to notice the angry crowd, quickly investigated to find Noah barricading himself indoors, trying not to get overwhelmed by the angry villagers. Noah asked Jacob if he could help explain things to the villagers and help smooth things over diplomatically, being a character with lots of charisma and having the literal power to influence people's minds. Sure enough, Jacob's character did go back out to the crowd, but not with pleading words of forgiveness or solemn words of restitution. He turned his finger back to Noah and asked the villagers to help him kill Noah's character, as he was a dangerous criminal who was a danger to all of them. DM asked for a persuasion check. Natural 20. Noah's Goliath is set upon by 100 angry villagers while Jacob sneers smugly from behind his enraged mob. As if in perfect sync, Noah and his barbarian both rage. Revenge is the only thing Noah wants. He charges Jacob's character, cutting down a score of villagers in his way before he is pushed back by the action economy and Jacob's spells. I can only watch in horror as my character is miles away at this point, stunned that the DM is allowing this to happen. Noah has his character run into the woods, badly wounded and a lot of his resources spent. We close out the session watching Jacob describe how he hunts down Noah's bleeding character, puts him to sleep, and kills him with guaranteed crits, before claiming the blood sigil of leadership he craved so badly. As you can imagine, the post-session is filled with a lot of anger and frustration from Noah and myself. Even John and Tony, who had tried really hard not to rock the boat with Jacob up to this point, were starting to distance themselves. The thing that made this event sting the most was the insistence by both Jacob and DM that the whole thing had been a great success. Both were adamant that it was a great RP session and no one should be upset by it because it was all in character, even if someone was very blatantly killed as a power play. DM even had the gall to claim that Noah's death was really his own fault because Jacob never directly attacked him before he started killing innocent villagers, and we only acted against him socially inside the game. This was so laughably false to the rest of us that we now have the running gag, social PvP doesn't exist. To this day, it is the most jacked up RPG sessions that I have had the horror to be a part of. Unfortunately, it was only a small part of the train wreck that was this RPG. And that was today's story. I hope you enjoyed your stay and that I will see you again soon, for there are always more stories to be shared.